Borderline personality disorder causes severe subjective distress, episodes of splitting, extreme affective instability, and impulsive anger. Yet, at a Social Security hearing, this subjective volatility crashes directly into the rigid, quantified metrics of administrative law. The evaluation process frequently stalls at step 5. This is where a vocational expert reviews the file and typically suggests that the claimant is capable of performing unskilled, low-stress work. That baseline assumption ignores the heavy metacognitive demands of the modern workplace. It fails to account for the constant emotional regulation required to interact with supervisors and coworkers, regardless of the job's physical or technical skill level. Securing an approval requires attacking the hearing from 2 directions simultaneously. You must translate medical symptoms into strict legal criteria, and then use those exact criteria to dismantle the vocational expert's testimony. This strategy involves 2 parts: proving medical severity under listing 12.08 at step 3, and using recent regulatory directives, specifically SSR 24.3P and EM 24027, to challenge the vocational findings at step 5. Arriving at a hearing with hundreds of pages of medical history is insufficient. Advocates must extract the specific evidence of clinical instability and explicitly apply it to disqualify the government's outdated vocational models. This flowchart maps out the architecture of listing 12.08, which governs personality and impulse control disorders. To meet this listing at step 3, a claimant must satisfy a 3-part test involving paragraphs A, B, and C. Success depends on satisfying paragraph A first. The medical file must document a pervasive, continuous pattern of specific clinical symptoms, usually manifesting in BPD as interpersonal instability, excessive emotionality, and recurrent aggressive outbursts. Proving those symptoms exist leads directly to the functional hurdle of paragraph B. The government requires explicit proof that these symptoms cause an extreme limitation in 1 or a marked limitation in 2 of 4 specific mental functioning areas. For BPD claimants, the interact with others quadrant is the primary pivot point. Clinical data demonstrating an inability to handle workplace conflict or tolerate criticism from a supervisor provides a legally defensible marked limitation. If the functional deficits fall short of paragraph B, paragraph C provides a safety net. This requires proving the illness is serious and persistent, meaning a documented 2-year history of the disorder, where the claimant has only a minimal capacity to adapt to environmental changes. Establishing a marked limitation in the interaction domain under Step 3 creates the necessary clinical framework to challenge the vocational expert's testimony later in the process. Establishing these marked limitations requires navigating the Social Security Administration's strict evidentiary hierarchy. A single psychiatric evaluation provides minimal value compared to a longitudinal medical record. The medical file must show a chronological pattern of volatility. Clinical notes detailing recurring episodes of self-harm, impulsive behavioral outbursts, and instances of relational splitting over months or years establish the pervasive pattern required by paragraph A. Clinical notes tell only part of the story. The administration highly prioritizes third-party statements from past employers, managers, or family members. These statements bridge the gap between clinical terminology and real-world consequences. A manager's account detailing how emotional lability caused immediate workplace conflict and job loss directly validates the interact with others deficit. Ongoing treatment presents a unique challenge. Consistent participation in specialized therapies like dialectical behavior therapy demonstrates medical compliance, but it can also be misinterpreted by a judge as an indication of functional improvement. Advocates must use the DBT notes to demonstrate that even within a highly structured, supportive therapeutic environment, the claimant's functional limitations remain marked. Building this chain of clinical history and third-party observation and therapy context prevents the judge from reducing a lifelong pattern of vocational failure into a series of non-medical behavioral choices. With the medical limitations defined, the focus shifts to the Step 5 cross-examination. Vocational experts routinely suggest basic SVP 1 or 2 jobs as a low-stress solution for claimants with severe interaction deficits. The structural flaw in this defense is the underlying data. The roles vocational experts suggest, like office helper or marker, are pulled from the Dictionary of Occupational Titles, a text last meaningfully updated in 1977. The technological landscape, the pace of work, and the social dynamics that define these occupational descriptions ceased to exist decades ago. This split screen highlights the advocate's primary tool, SSR 24-3P. Enacted in January 2025, this ruling forces a comparison between the obsolete 1977 definitions and modern occupational data. Under SSR 24-3P, a vocational expert must explicitly reconcile the claimant's documented inability to tolerate criticism with the actual modern requirements of SOC-defined roles. Advocates reinforce this standard using the EM 24027 directive. This mandate acts as an evidentiary filter, specifically challenging vocational experts who rely on ghost jobs that have evolved out of existence. The cross-examination forces a simple admission. Performing even the most basic task today demands a baseline capacity to regulate emotion around supervisors and coworkers. The BPD claimant simply lacks that capacity. When the vocational expert cannot reconcile vintage job descriptions with the strict interpersonal demands of modern employment, their testimony becomes legally insufficient. This matrix visualizes the dual threat strategy. Clinical data establishing marked limitations in paragraph B neutralizes obsolete models. Projecting these precise limitations, proved through DBT notes, onto the Step 5 vocational matrix proves there is no surviving occupational base. Relying on the medical file alone allows the claim to be defeated by administrative technicalities. One must master the vocational mechanics of the hearing. Mastering the intersection of Listing 12.08 and SSR 24-3P anchors the hearing in the claimant's actual capacity to survive in the modern economy. Ultimately, effective representation for borderline personality disorder requires closing the gap between the claimant's subjective suffering and the objective requirements of administrative law.